taking a chance. Telling me to dance, taking a chance. Telling me to dance, taking a chance.
And welcome to My Way, Conversations with Entrepreneurs Doing Business Outside the Box. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and super excited to be with you tonight with a neighbor down the road. And I'm sitting here like it's almost been 3 months since I've been here already, and we have not seen each other yet. I don't know how, when I'm literally going to the beach, going to the library, and running into my 8th grade teacher. This has been a thing since we've gotten here. It's been a lot of fun. Going to the grocery store, there's that awkward kid that sat next to me in homeroom, 6th grade. It's just been wild. But I'm hoping to get to see him really soon. Here's the thing. This is the guy who knows a guy. That's what he's known as. And he came to this area where I grew up here in Groton, Connecticut, well after I was long gone, but made his way networking and getting to meet a lot of people. He is known as a networking concierge. He makes introductions to people. And I want to know who told him he could do that. That's what we're going to find out here tonight on My Way, because it's all about doing business his way. So without further ado, let's introduce the guy who knows a guy, Michael Whitehouse. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Down the road. Hi.
Yes. Hello.
I probably pass your house like daily.
It is just off of a main road, so you probably pass the road we're on on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, probably so. But I'm glad to have you on here. Michael came on to Project Joy right before we moved, actually, and was talking about his book. And so it was good to get to introduce him a little bit to you guys then. But I'm excited to dive into this world of being a professional networker tonight, because who said you could do that? Who said you could make money like just introducing people? That's the thing.
Who said I could do that? Actually, he's the one who said I could make money doing it. Who said I could introduce people? No one. I just started doing it. And honestly, I started doing it in retrospect. I didn't realize this until I got deeper into coaching. I think I really started networking out of a sense of imposter syndrome. Except I don't think it's imposter syndrome if you know you ain't nothing. I didn't have a business. I didn't have any money. I don't think I had a job. I was just this guy who just moved to town who nobody knew. So all I had was the connections I was making in my networking. So the only thing I had to provide value, so I wasn't wasting your time when we had a well, it wasn't a virtual coffee, an in-person virtual coffee. What do we call those?
Mhm.
Coffees. That's right.
Yeah.
So the thing that would make me not be wasting your time is I'd be like, well, I met someone at this event. Do you know them? I'd be happy to introduce you. Oh yeah, that'd be great. And since people don't do that, they should, but they don't, which was great for me because all of a sudden, 6 months later, I'm making these, major connections and becoming known as a connector because I'm doing that because no one else does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did it basically to make up for, I don't have anything else to offer. So how about I connect you with these people? And almost a decade later, I've realized, oh, that's really valuable. There's something to that.
It is. It truly is. And you're right that people don't do it. Even though so many people now talk about the importance of networking, they still don't do it. Yeah. So what do you think is like holding people back from actually bringing people together and making those connections?
Most people don't know what networking is. Someone recently shared an article with me that said, I think it was about investing. Hey, I was investing or getting a job or whatever. And it basically said, good news, networking has nothing to do with success in this space. And so I'm like, okay, this should be interesting. And it said, yeah, there's people who are very successful and they haven't handed out a single business card. And they're not going to the grip and grins and they're not doing all these things. And I'm listening, like, at some point you're going to mention something that's actually networking, right? Oh, you don't know what networking is. Because a lot of people think networking is going to the events, knowing you got to know your pitch, you got to know your 60-second, your elevator pitch, and getting business cards in people's hands, and it's networking is about giving first, and that's what a lot of people get wrong. Networking is about making connections, about creating value. It's not about taking. It's not about pitching. It's not about making sure everyone knows who you are. It's about going out and providing value, which is what I was doing, creating those connections. And so when you do that, that's when, if I make a bunch of introductions for other people, they think I'm pretty cool. So then once I've done that, then I can say, hey, do you know anyone who might be interested in my product or service, or who might be a good partner or whatever? And they're happy to reciprocate because I've given first to them. And even if not to them personally, they know that I've given to other people around them. And I'm not just going around with my hand out being like, hey, put something in my hand. Come on, let's go.
Right.
And the big thing I'm starting to see now is I'm seeing some shifts, some opportunities that didn't exist ever, because 2020 put the world online. And all of a sudden, I think there's a lot of, there's connectors everywhere. There's, the connector of Boston, the connector of Worcester, the connector of Hartford, but they were all regional. They all connected in their city, in their little niche.
Right.
And then everyone went online. And I think we're going to see some really interesting things in the future. It's getting a little bit off topic, but something I'm kind of excited about is as these people with this connector mindset start going to the virtual the Zoomosphere and bumping into each other, then you get all these connectors meeting connectors and organizations of connectors and meetups, a Zoom call with 30 local connectors on it who all have this connector mindset, and they're connected to different places in the world. I think that's where some exciting stuff is going to be happening. But I digress. Back to your question.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fantastic because there's 100 different ways I want to go with this now. But like, I think first is the importance of networking in our businesses. I think there's a lot of people who get into being an entrepreneur and they're like, many people who get into entrepreneurship are tired of like working for other people and dealing with other people. And so then they're like, now I have to deal with other people. So like, see how that works. You can't completely get away from it, but it's like, why is networking, why would you say in your own words, is networking so important for our businesses, no matter what line? Is it important for every line of work?
Pretty much it is important for every line of work. One of the leading indicators or differentiators even in careers, people have, what are they called? Jobs. That's it, right? Where they get a paycheck and someone tells them what to do. I can't remember. I have some friends who do those things. But even in the world of work and jobs, one of the key indicators for how much someone will make lifetime is their ability to, those soft skills, ability to network, ability to build relationships, even for engineers, computer programmers, also because the network is, even if there's a hiring process and you got to go through the interviews and whatnot, your network will still say, hey, did you hear there's an opening down at the company? You should apply. And that's how you get your application in 12 hours before it shows up on Indeed, because somebody lets you in there. Or, networking won't necessarily get you a job, but it'll get you the interview. Same thing with business. It won't necessarily get you a customer, but it'll get you the conversation. So networking, it shortcuts the process and gets you to a more human conversation. If you're not networking, then you're selling through marketing, Facebook ads, Google ads, spam, emails, mailers, billboards, whatever. And when people are coming in, they're coming in with their guard up. They don't know you. You don't know them. They don't know if you offer any value. They don't know if you're going to take their money. They don't know if you're just going to steal their money. You never know who's going to do what. And so, when you are introduced to someone, when you have a relationship, then people actually know you. And the other thing is, and I'm glad that Christopher Nino popped up in the comments, because he is a well-known lunatic, basically. But because I have a network and I've connected with a lot of people and built a lot of relationships, there's very little damage that one unhinged person, he tried to bring me in on a project, tried to take advantage of my network, and then I didn't do everything he wanted to, and now he runs around calling me a scammer. I thought he died, frankly. So glad to see you're still okay, Chris. But when you have, when you're building those relationships out there, it makes you more of a whole person. You're not just one of the, you're not just one of the businesses in the crowd. You're not just one of those, evil capitalists trying to take people's money. You're a person, and you get that social proof. And in marketing, you often try to, you put testimonials on your website so that people will see that you're legit, or you'll get testimonials on LinkedIn or Google My Business or whatever, or Yelp, so that people say, oh yeah, they're well reviewed. And that simulates what a network actually does. But an actual network is far more powerful, because, if you go on, I'm working on putting together a mastermind, and on the page, there's a bunch of testimonials of people who are in a particular network. So if you go on there, you're like, oh, I know that person who's doing the testimonial, then, because, I could have hired actors for the testimonials. You don't know. But if you know them, because there's that human connection, then it makes a whole big, a whole difference. And it ends up being a very powerful thing, and life gets easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back a little bit in your story, because as you were talking about how you got into all of this, you were mentioning, like, I didn't have anything else to bring to the table. But what got you out there, even beginning networking to begin with? Because I think there's a lot of people who are just afraid of that. Like they're like, I don't want to talk to other people. This is like, I get nervous in crowds of people, etc. So what made you actually start, like, going out there if you didn't have anything to offer, like, if you felt that way anyway?
Well, I didn't consciously feel that way at the time. It's in retrospect, knowing what I do as a coach, I'm like, oh, interesting. That's the behavior that is consistent with this kind of mindset. But so I'm hyper extroverted. So for the introverts out there, I will address the introverts in a moment. For myself, I'm hyper extroverted. So the introverts out there will not learn from this part of it. So to me, I would much rather just walk into a room full of strangers and start making connections and shaking hands and schmoozing than pick up the phone and cold call and knock on doors, because it's just more comfortable to me to build the relationships. So I was doing I got into networking because I read Keith Ferrazzi's book, Never Eat Lunch Alone. And so I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I picked up one of Ivan Meisner's books. Like I found it used somewhere or borrowed it or something. I didn't know who Ivan Meisner was at the time. The founder of BNI, for those of you who don't know who Ivan Meisner is. And so I started, reading the books, consuming the content. I'm like, oh, this networking thing might be something. And so when I lived in Massachusetts, I went to a couple chamber events, kind of played around with it. And when I was moving to Groton, someone I knew through networking said, hey, if you're going out there, then you should connect with the Eastern Connecticut Chamber of Commerce, because that's a big chamber out there. I later learned there's 3 other chambers as well. But he said, go check them out. I went to the website, found when there was an event coming up, and attended the event. The event was actually the night before I moved into our apartment. And by amazing coincidence, it was exactly 7 years to the day before the lockdowns for COVID.
Wow.
By complete coincidence. But but yes, so my thought was, I'm going to go where the people are. I'm going to go where things are happening. I don't know how networking works, but I know where it works. So
Yeah.
let's go figure it out. What I have learned since then is networking events exist because you don't have to know what you're doing to go to them. You just have to show up and network.
Yeah.
So that's
whatever that means.
yeah, that's what people go there. But what networking really is about providing value and then receiving it in return.
Yeah.
And that can be done. Now you have to do it with people. You have to communicate with other humans, but you don't have to do it in a loud, crowded room. Bumping into people and in person. You can do it virtually. You can network locally. Yeah, I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can use the internet to do a video call with someone in your own town. Did you know that? Amazing.
We're finding things out that we didn't know tonight, boys.
Yeah. But if you're not, there's some people who have come out as networkers, gotten comfortable with it once Zoom came around. Because going out to the events, too much. Going out to a coffee shop, still not great. Going to someone's office, okay. Talking to someone in a rectangular box in their desk, that's okay. You got your essential oils going. You got your noise in the background. You got your cat. You've got your chair.
You don't even have to wear pants. Like
don't even have to wear pants. Just make sure you don't get up if you're not wearing pants.
Just don't forget that point.
Yeah, don't forget you're not wearing pants because that makes for a hilarious story, especially if you're on a video interview.
Yeah,
not a story I've had yet, fortunately. But so you don't necessarily need to go to these networking events in order to network, as long as you know some people. It's a matter of getting on a Zoom call with them, and first you're seeking how you can help them. What are their challenges? What are their needs? Because most problems can be solved by people. So if someone needs someone, you ask, how can I help you? What are you looking for? And then you ask them, I'm looking to make more connections in the automotive space. Do you know anyone in that space you'd introduce me to? And if you're not pitching them and they're not pitching you, you tend to be pretty open with, I'll introduce you to a couple people. You introduce me to a couple people. And if every person you meet with introduces you to 2 people, you very quickly are meeting more people than you would meet going to live events. And you're doing it on your terms, in your space. And you're not reaching out to strangers. You're not cold calling. Every one of these meetings is somebody sent an email or made a call or a text or whatever and made that connection for you. So for someone who is not comfortable with that, who the idea of going to an event with 80 people packed into a room with some music in the background and everyone looks like they already know each other, if that gives you heart palpitations, you can just meet people one by one and get individual connections and create that same kind of effect and benefit.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you're addressing something that I think makes a lot of people nervous about networking. Like they just don't like to human. They don't like to be out there. They picture it a certain way, like you said, like big crowds of people, etc. And they don't want to be a part of that. So they think that's the only way to get it done. And I think that just like everything else on the planet, we're all individuals and do things in a very different way. For someone looking in, they could go, look, this guy's really extroverted. I'm out. Like this is not who I am. But I think that's the key, is finding how you are most comfortable, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing I'll say is introverts who actually dive into networking tend to be better at it than extroverts. So as an extrovert, I can just meet more people.
Yeah.
So now I do try to provide value relationships, usually through introductions. Now I'm also an extrovert with ADHD. So it means my memory is like a steel sieve. Everything is, I will literally meet with someone and not remember the conversation next week. I take notes. I do my best. That's why I try to provide value when I'm meeting. So I'll make an introduction or two. So when I forget to follow up 3 weeks later, they're like, that Michael. But he made 3 really good connections for me. So he's cool. Introverts tend to be much better at keeping track of following up, of sending a thank you note, of sending, introverts tend to be the big send out cards users. Extroverts are like, woo, on to the next person.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's not psychologically expensive to go meet more people. I can do 8-10 back-to-back Zoom calls in a row, and that's a good day. Whereas an introvert's like 8-10 a month, you said, right? Per month? That sounds like a tough month, but I could probably muscle through. And I'm like, nope, per day. So the introvert wants to meet someone and cultivate that relationship and squeeze all the juice from that orange. Not in a using kind of way, but just kind of like, what's every way I can help you? What's every way you can help me? What are, can I make 6 introductions to you so I don't have to go meet someone else?
Yeah.
How can this one relationship really just dive deep? And then maybe meet one more person and then dive deep. So that's why introverts tend to be better. I've had to build systems to compensate for not being an introvert. For not being great at the follow-up, so I intentionally give that value up front because I know I'm not going to give it in the back end.
Yeah.
Whereas the introvert, and again, it depends, if you're trying to build global networks to connect investors to investments and make it your full-time business and build that business to 7 figures, as is my goal, then yeah, you might need to work at a different level. But I suspect most of your viewers are probably not saying, yes, how can I be a global networker connecting 7-figure deals across continents?
Yeah.
They're probably thinking, how can I find a few more clients and know the vendors I need when I need them? Which is not the same level. So there's there's things that I do that you don't need to do.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of like in the middle of those two things. I feel like for me personally, like I have moments where I'm very like, okay, I need to collect 50 people right now. Like I need to, like, this is what I need to do. And then other times I tend to be very attention to details. I do send thank you notes. I do a lot of those little things because to me, it's important to me to have more than just a surface level relationship. I get very emotionally attached. So one of the things that I will say about that side of it is that for me, I tend to feel a heavy level of responsibility when I'm introducing people. And I felt that in fact, with my last episode guest who said to me, you introduced me to this person and I knew that they were going to be a quality individual because you introduced me. Like and I'm like, oh, like that just feels so heavy in the moment. Like, do you ever feel that as you're making introductions? Do you ever feel like, God, I hope they follow up, kind of thing? Like, I hope that they're acting with integrity.
So my worry with introductions is that it is an unpleasant connection. So I don't worry about if they follow up. I don't worry about if something great comes out of it. I would guess, although I don't know because I don't tend to follow up and chase them down. I would guess that half the introductions I make don't culminate into a meeting. For one reason or another, ends up in someone's spam box. They forget. They don't care. They're not interested. Whatever. But that's fine. Because nobody's going to be like, you introduced me to someone and they never talked to me. I hate you. They might say, you introduced me to someone and they pitched me and it was really unpleasant and I'd rather you not do that. That I'd feel bad about.
Yeah.
And I'd also feel bad about you introduced me to someone and they turned out to be a scumbag and they took my money and ran and whatnot. Most of the people I meet come through some kind of introduction or networking space, which tends to weed out the real dirtbags, because if you're an actual scam artist, then word gets around. Even if you're legitimate, but your products don't deliver value like they should. You do what you say, but what you say isn't really what they need or that kind of thing. That word still gets around. I've heard some back channel talk about like, oh yeah, I heard about this. Yeah, I wouldn't. So there's enough reputation that comes around in the networking space that for the most part, the people I introduce tend to be pretty good. But I'm not, for the most part, vouching for the people I introduce. Most of the introductions I make is, I met someone, they seem like someone you might want to talk to. There's a few people I introduce and say, you should work with this person. Yeah. Phil Puccia, for example, he's the reason why I have a networking concierge program. I would definitely say if you need what Phil does, you should hire Phil. He's legit. There's a couple dozen other people that I'd say, yes, you should hire that person for what they do. But most introductions I make, it's, I met someone and you should talk to them. And here's why. You both work in the same space, or you might be interested in, there might be a partnership opportunity, or you might want to collaborate on this. But there's a lot of like mights and maybes and coulds and possibilities.
Right.
I'm just pointing out, it's like if we're in the same networking event and I would say, hey, have you met John over here? He works in the same same space as you do. You guys might want to connect. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good. And so far, let's see what my running tally is. So far, I have yet to, since I started counting, well, even before I started counting, I haven't had anyone who came back to me and said, that was a truly terrible introduction. I did have one person who met someone through me who was a very shady coach and had a kind of cult-like vibe. But I checked the notes and realized that while that person had been a speaker at an event I ran, I had never actually made an introduction to them.
Interesting.
And I think it's possibly because I got a little bit of a vibe of like, I don't know if I actually want to staging someone is different from introducing them. And I was thinking, okay, I need to reach out to the people I introduced and let them know what I've learned since. And I realized that list was 0, and I was super excited. So none of the introductions I've made, and since November, I have made 1,046 introductions.
Wow.
It's October now, so that's 11 months. I just started counting in November. And of that 1,046, none of them have said, I wish I didn't meet that person. I wish you hadn't introduced me. Now, I've had some who are, it's not really what I'm looking for, or we talked, there was nothing there, or, I'm one or two who are like, kind of a waste of time, but not like my life is poorer, just I'm 30 minutes older and no better for having met them. But even that, I think I've gotten that feedback 2 or 3 times out of 1,146 introductions.
Yeah. Is that something you would want to keep track of? Like eventually, if you had the system to do it, would you want to know like how many of these introductions actually turned into something? Like, is that something that you'd be interested in? Or are you just like, look, I did my job and introduced, and now?
I think if I could magically get that knowledge, there was like some AI that could track the universe and tell me that, I'd be interested in knowing it. But it's worth almost 0 to do it. So I don't necessarily see why we're tracking that kind of information, because that requires like chasing everyone down and saying, hey, I introduced you to these people, and what did you think? I do that for my clients. The ones who pay me to make introductions for them. Right. Them I check in with and say, here's the list of people I introduced you to, which ones were good, which ones weren't. Because them I want to dial in and make sure I'm making great introductions for them. Yeah,
well, that's what I mean. Like, you're paying clients, is that something that you track? Because like I would imagine that it would just require an element of follow-up of just, saying, hey, I introduced you to Bob last week. Did anything happen with Bob? Whatever the case may be.
And to be completely honest, I'd only track one side of that. So I care I care about everybody. But for business purposes, I care if my client got what they needed for the introduction. Yeah. I'm not necessarily going to track down someone who I introduced to a client and say, how do you feel about meeting my client? Because my clients are also pretty awesome, generally. I don't work with not awesome people for the most part. Yeah. But I was going to say the direction I'm going in terms of systems is actually creating more networks. Something I've actually just did. This is breaking news. I have not talked about this on anyone else's show yet.
Hey,
you heard it here first.
That's it.
So I'm developing something called the Connector Nexus, which I think I'm going to shorten to Connexus, because Connector Nexus is hard to say. Because I'm starting to find more and more of these commission-based opportunities. If you find me an investor for this, then I'll give you X%. Or we've got this warehouse full of overstocked. I almost said VCRs. I don't think anyone's buying those. Warehouse full of, overstocked wooden desks. And so there's someone who has an Amazon store that could totally move a warehouse full of desks. They're looking for that. And this desk person's looking for the Amazon guy. But it is 2 ships in the dark. And it needs to be systemic in order to make that connection. But the problem is, if I say, hey, Jessica, I got this guy. He's got a warehouse full of desks. Do you know anyone? You say, well, I know someone who I think has an Amazon store. Maybe they can help you, and you connect me. And then I talk to them, and they're like, no, not me, but my friend, I think he's ready for it. And the friend does it. Then, or maybe the friend knows someone else. Then that friend gets a commission. I get a commission. Jessica doesn't get a commission. Right. That is sad for you. It's also sad for me, because I know you made that connection, and I'm like, should I give you part of my commission, or how should we do that? So the idea of the Connector Nexus is it's Currently, it's very simple. It's a Google form in which people sign up. They tell me, and part of signing up is they say who introduced them to me. And when a commission comes out of that connection, I divide it up the line. And the math I'm using is pretty simple. I take 20%, and then 60% of what remains goes to the person who made the connection. 40% goes up. 60% of that goes to someone. 40% goes up the ladder.
Interesting.
60% goes up. It's like multi-level networking.
Yeah.
It's like networking. But so that way, if somebody, when people are making connections for me, it honors the chain of connections, as David Holman says. And it makes it so if I say, hey, I've got this opportunity, and you say, oh, I know someone, there's a lot of broke networkers who help a lot of other people make money. I know, because I was one of them. And so that's the systemization I'm working towards, to take those people who are networking at that level, who are being very generous with their connections, and if they're in my system, in my universe, then some of those, they'll make some introductions to me, and 6 months later they'll get a PayPal notification because I'm keeping track of where I got this from, and something comes of something, and I say, hey, here you go. Because that's the challenge with connections is what's the provenance of where something come from. So I'm trying to build something that really creates that value. So that's more of where my attention is going, to figure out how to connect at scale more than one-on-one. Because 1,146 connections is a lot of connections to do one email and one LinkedIn message at a time.
Right. I think that's a great idea, because I think about, like you said, how many introductions that I've made that I know have turned into things, and I'm sitting here like, good, thanks for the high five for the introduction. Like, glad it worked out for you. It's great.
I'm happy for you.
Yes, I'm very happy. And look, I truly am. It really does bring me a lot of joy to make connections. One of the things that I've talked about on my Project Joy often is that I love to connect people together. I love to take like someone that I went to elementary school with and somebody that I just met like in the last year, and be like, oh, look, match made in heaven. Like, it's fantastic. It brings me a lot of joy. But if there's something like, well, now they're making $1 million together, I'm like, could just buy me dinner or something like over here. That'd be great.
Yep.
So at what point, I guess, did you know that this was going to be the thing that you do? Like, how long did it take you from like doing all this networking to like being the networker that you are, like, professionally?
So I started networking at scale. I intentionally in 2014. I wrote the book in 2017. The Guy Who Knows a Guy. I first started really making money as a networker in 2022. So it took about 8 years from when I started networking. And I'm fairly certain that had the pandemic not come, it may never have happened, because the technology and the connection that the pandemic created allowed me to connect at the scale that I do. Because prior to the pandemic, I thought about this, because if this is a matter of I just had to figure something out, and I could have tripped over this 5 years ago and skipped a whole bunch of the intermediate jobs that got me here, should I be feeling dumb that I didn't do this 10 years ago? And I realized I don't think I could have, because even if I'd known what kind of networks existed, what kind of opportunities existed, and started going those things, Zoom wasn't really a thing at scale. Skype, video calls, whatever. People weren't so much communicating through that, except in very rarefied spaces. So I probably would have been having phone calls with people. And I suspect those phone calls would have ended with, well, so next time you're in Miami, definitely let's get together and have a real conversation. Because at a distance, those weren't considered real conversations. You had to meet someone at a conference. You had to meet them, somehow engage with them. And being where I am in Southeast Connecticut, that wasn't happening here. Unless I kept making trips down to New York City and meeting people there. And even there, it would have been tricky, because I went to probably 10, 15 networking events here before I started really making connections. So if it took 15 trips to the city, which is a 3.5-hour drive plus parking, that would have been a major undertaking to begin to maybe try to break into creating some connection in a place I'm not located.
Right.
Once things went online, I was networking on Earth, which
Mhm.
I'm located on. Everyone else I network with is also on Earth. So
Yeah.
we're all in the same place.
Go figure.
The business sphere, the Earth.
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
human sphere. So, I think the clock really started in 2020
Mm.
for this being possible. Then it was a matter of figuring out, what is it? How do I find it? And the major turning point, as I said, props to Phil, was when I was trying to figure out what is my offer? What can I sell? Because I knew I wanted to do something like the coaching, development, business development, entrepreneurship space, but I had no idea what I had to offer
Mm.
because I'm not, certified in.
Right.
I got training as a life coach, but I realized I don't really want to be a coach and just coach people all day long and fill my calendar.
Yeah.
More like a therapist. So like what program, what could I offer? What could I put together that's worth $1,000, $5,000, $10,000? And Phil said, some people get paid to make connections. I was like, wait, what? This would be like, some people get paid to fish or some people get paid to drink beer, except I don't fish. And
Yeah.
I don't think I could drink beer as much as I network. Very, very dangerous.
I think we'd have a very different Michael Whitehouse on this show.
Yeah, but it was like some people get paid to play video games. What? Amazing.
Yeah.
So once I realized that, then it was just a matter of saying, okay, how can I provide value? And something I've learned, I teach people now, you want to build a business, somebody has your money. So you have something of value. Someone who has money finds value in it and will give you money for it.
Right.
Most people's mistake is they go after people who don't have money.
Right.
So if you do something of value and people who don't have money value it, you do not have a business. You have a charity.
Right.
But if you do something of value and you figure out who has money, who values it, then you have a business. And once you have a business, then you can have a low-cost program that supports. I now have a $97 a month weekly group coaching program. So somebody who wants my help, I've got that program that the guy who's, working at McDonald's and trying to figure out business can pay $97 a month.
Right.
And if they can't afford 97, I'll give them a scholarship. I can afford to do that because I found people who have money who will hire me to do this work for them. And that subsidizes what I can then do for people who don't yet have money.
Yeah, that's awesome to be able to do that, to get to that space where you can give back a little bit and because you know what it's like to be in that position where $97 a month might have been a stretch.
I remember a year ago when $97 a month was big money. Yeah, I remember I gave there's someone who he way discounted his program down to $100 and it didn't quite do what it was supposed to do. And I remember being upset and being like, I kind of want my $100 back.
Yeah.
And then the conversation, I'm like, wait a minute, what am I saying? How scarce is my mindset that I need my $100 back? But yeah, and they often say, and there's some memes about this, which I think are kind of hilarious how they're put together, but that it's easier to make a $5,000 sale than a $500 sale. Because a $5,000 the $500 program, that client is like, all right, so I'm making a big investment here, and this really needs to work. It's a key part of my strategy. I'm really putting my hopes on what you can deliver for me. And the $5,000 program, the client says, I paid, just make sure, please confirm receipt. And that's it. Because they are in a more abundant place. I recently got an app developed, which was not cheap, not as expensive as you'd think, but quite a few bucks.
Yeah.
And I remember buying it and being like, yeah, no, that seems like a good thing to have. I don't have a strategy for it right now, but next year I'll probably be glad I have this when I start putting content in it. It is out there. The Guy Who Knows the Guy app. It's in the App Store. It's free and it's got a bunch of content in it and more content as my VA puts it in there. But I didn't even have like a strategy for it because I'm now at a place where I said, that's probably something I want to get. The pay once for life program was about to end. There's going to be a monthly maintenance. Hey, look, there it is. That's my app.
He was not joking.
Yep. So I just did it. Whereas I remember a year and a half ago, I'd see something for $50, $100, be like, ooh, $100.
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't know about that. But it's once you pass a threshold, I found this. So on the Guy Who Knows a Guy podcast, season 3 back in 2021, I knew people were successful who were about as smart as me. Like, they didn't seem to have a lot that I didn't. So it's like, what do you have that I don't, that you're making high 6, low 7 figures and I don't have? And so I brought them on the show and basically went out and said, hey, I'm looking for successful people to come on and tell me what the heck you're doing that I'm not, effectively.
Right.
And time after time, a theme came back, was the mindset shift. There was a point when they had an inflection point and they went from being broke to not broke.
Yeah.
Scarcity to abundance. And a few of them, and a couple, most of them just glossed over it and we moved on. And by the 4th or 5th times happened, I'm like, okay, no, we're going to look right in there. I want to know when that happened, how it happened. And none of them could really explain it. And I now realize I can't explain my shift either, because you can't remember a past mindset. You can remember where you were, you can remember what you're doing, remember what you felt, but you can't remember how your brain worked before you went through a transition. But it was a transition of going from scarcity to abundance.
Right.
And some of it was, having a bit, when I first started seeing 4-figure checks, I mean, they're virtual, they're electronic transfers, but 4-figure transfers rolling into my account and being like, holy crap, people pay me for this.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
That was part of it. And then saying, if I can do it once, I can do it 100 times.
Right.
And that was part of the shift. But even before that happened, it was when Phil told me, you can get paid to make introductions. I'm like, I'm great at making introductions. I can get paid for the thing I'm good at, and just hooked onto that and ran with it. That was the key. And so I always teach people, if you're great at something, figure out who's willing to pay you for it, and you've got a business. And you don't need to be dependent on an employer or whatever. And in the meantime, because we live in the future, I paid all my bills with Uber in 2021. Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, various gig work. But almost all my income that paid my bills, I had a couple of clients, couple of coaching clients who paid for my subscriptions and this and that.
Yeah.
Because the business overhead. But my actual bills, what kept the lights on, what paid the mortgage, was Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash.
Yeah.
Because we live in a time, and if you don't like those, maybe Instacart. If you don't like Instacart, there's virtual call center services. There's VA services, all kinds of different things you can do to sell your time for money that are still more entrepreneurial in your control. It's not, we no longer live in a time when you have to go to an office, work 9 to 5,
right,
and then try to build your business between 6 and midnight.
Right. Yeah, I'm thankful that there are so many more opportunities now to at least get our feet wet with entrepreneurship, that we don't have to necessarily settle all the time, and get to where we never see our families, we never have time to take a breath, that it's a frustrating thing. I want to ask you this question before we run out of time tonight. And because you've shared with us what networking is, you've told us a little bit how to do it, the importance of certain things in a way. What is the value, in your words, of what you provide to your clients? If we can just go out and network ourselves, tell me what the value is that you provide, Michael.
So for my networking concierge clients, networking takes time. So that system I told you, where you're going to meet, even if you don't go to events, you're going to meet with people and ask for introductions, and doing that, you're going to meet with a lot of people who, a lot of them will be neutral. Be like, oh, that was nice. I met some people. That was nice to me. That was a nice conversation. You're going to meet with some people, you're like, oh my God, that's half an hour of my life I'm never going to get back. But it's going to take a bunch of time. And then if you go to events, that's going to take even longer. If you go to a 3-hour networking event, or when I go to a 2-hour event, it takes 4 hours. I got to drive there. I got to be there afterwards. I mean, I'm bad at leaving. Then I got to drive back. So there's a bunch of time that invests into it. So with my clients, the thing that surprised me most was they didn't need me for the money I can make them. They knew how to make money. That's why they could afford me. They wanted me for the time I could save them. So it wasn't about, most of my clients have connections to some people more awesome than the people I know. My clients have made amazing connections for me.
Yeah.
But they still need more. You always need to meet more people. You always need to be making new connections. You always need to be staying current with what's going on. But they don't have time to go to a 3-hour networking event, even a virtual one. They don't have time to meet with 10 people to find the 2 who are their partners or who they want to meet with.
Yeah.
So my job is to connect them with just the ones that are the ones for them without the screening process. So I am the networking event and the string of meetings that results in that. Instead of those, they hire me.
Right.
So instead of going to all those events, I am like a walking networking event. It doesn't take their time. So there's a very specific audience of people. One out of population-wise is probably 1 out of 100,000 people who would hear that and be like, "Oh my God, how do I hire this guy?" And the other 99,999 would be like, "Why would I pay someone? I got time." Because most people, if you're watching TV 3 hours a day, you don't need me. You got time. The people who need me are the ones who are busy as much as they want to be, or they're living the Tim Ferriss lifestyle, the 4-hour work week, and they're running a 30-hour week business because they do have things optimized. Well, if you have things optimized and you spend 20 more hours a week networking, then you've de-optimized the business. So you can outsource many things. I am that for networking. So the business owners who want to have that 4-hour work week, or if they are networking, I can supercharge that. They go out to these events and I bring them the take from my connections in addition to the connections they're already making. I'm also starting to expand more into education. I'm going to be launching a mastermind in 2023. I've got my low-cost inner circle program, which is more about how to network, teaching you to do it, how to build your own network, those kinds of things. But that's more my 2023 plans. 2022 is all about done for you, and now I'm working on because teaching is more scalable than done for you.
Yeah.
When you do done for you have to actually do it. You're
gonna actually eventually run out of time, which is something. Yeah, I love though how you've talked about time in several aspects, several parts of our conversation tonight, and I think that that's something that I try to be really real about that on this show when we're talking to entrepreneurs. How many times I've been told, the get rich quick kind of thing, and you were talking about your journey and it took several years, and you're talking about networking, that it takes time. Like I think it's something that is grossly under exaggerated in the entrepreneur world, and I get very fired up about it. I'm like, we have to stop this. We truly need to stop, because people think that they can literally quit their job today and that they're going to be able to pay all of their bills tomorrow, because it just is supposed to happen overnight. That's the lifestyle that is portrayed sometimes. And can it happen? Absolutely. I'm here for the miracles, but it's like, it takes time to build things and grow things. And so I appreciate your honesty talking about that and the different areas that it has affected you as well.
Yeah. Well, and as I said, there's a bridge that never existed in gig work. So you can quit your job and pay your bills tomorrow, but you won't be your business that's doing it to begin with.
Right.
But it could be, if I had to work a 9-to-5 job, I couldn't have done what I did.
Right.
Because I need to meet with people during the week. I drove Uber Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
I networked during the week.
Yeah.
So there's opportunities that didn't exist, so that you can jump into doing your own thing, but it's not going to be your online business or your coaching or your whatever that's going to pay your bills from day one.
Right.
It's your gestalt of your whole entrepreneurial enterprise is going to pay your bills, including probably, because I consider gig work entrepreneurial. It's 1099.
Right.
A lot of people get in trouble because they think of it like a job.
Right.
If you think of Uber like a job, you're going to be in trouble, because you don't have a boss. You don't have someone telling you what to do. The app more or less points you the right way, except when it doesn't.
Yeah.
There's certain things you have to do. If you just take everything it gives you, then you may find yourself in Maine, and you might not want that right now. So
this one night, we had gotten up to I have to tell you this really quick because I laughed so hard. We look for certain amounts on there. Like, you have when you're doing gig work and
Mhm.
like it'll give you it's going to be 10 miles, but they give you like $2. Like this is not a thing that we would take. Okay.
Yeah, the DoorDash $3 order.
Yes. And
Yes,
so we get up, where the bridge is that crosses over to Mohegan when you're on 12, like, and
Yep.
okay. We're over there and you see this $23 order pop up right on our phone. And my husband's like, ooh, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm feeling like, cause I feel like I'm not sure. And he's like, just click it. We drove all the way to a town I didn't even know existed in Connecticut. I didn't even know it was a thing. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I can't believe and I had just watched some kind of Netflix documentary that scared the crap out of me about the middle of nowhere. So now we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
I can't.
Well, yeah. I remember with DoorDash, the rule was $1 per mile. So if it wasn't at least $1 per mile.
Yeah, that's how we are. That's how we are too.
Yeah, Uber for humans is tends to be a better value, especially with some of the. I haven't done it in a while. A few weeks ago, I did a night of Uber because I really enjoyed it when I was doing it last year. Listen to music, podcasts, and meeting people, and driving people to casinos and the airport and all kinds of stuff. And back to back, you drive like someone who can't afford a car because they work at Dunkin' Donuts, and then after that, someone who's managing the tour at Mohegan Sun, coming from the ferry, going up to the going to the casino. I think I should do back to back a guy who worked at McDonald's and a guy who needed a ride back from Westport because his Porsche had broken down on the way to check on his yacht.
Gosh, so sorry.
Yeah, so you get to meet all these different people, so it's fun. And it popped up and said, hey, do you want? We'll give you $100. You do 10 rides. And I'm like, I'm $100, $100. Do I need it? No. Do I want it? Yeah, I want to do Uber again. What the heck? So I did it and went out and had some fun, and so I'll still do it occasionally for fun because it's so much fun to meet those people. I have made one out of 1,500 rides, one actual networking connection that contacted me afterwards.
Interesting.
Because you can't ask them for their contact info.
Right.
I give them my card. So, people are like, oh, it must be great for networking. Nope. Totally worthless. But I get some really interesting conversations and I learned a lot. And it was fascinating to get that ground level view, when the labor shortage was hitting and, when the vaccines were coming out. And because, you see on social media, it's far right, far left. Right. Otherwise, people just they duck. They don't like, I don't have an opinion. I'm not part of this conversation.
Right.
In the car, you're like a bartender. So
exactly.
They'll tell you anything. So I was like, oh, that's what people think about the vaccines. Oh, that's why people are afraid to get them. That's what they're not educated about. That's what they don't. So it was really fascinating to get that. Like I was, a one-man Gallup poll. I had this intimate knowledge with what the mass. I was completely outside of my social media bubble.
Yeah.
And got all this fascinating insight. So it's really, I've always said every politician should drive 40 hours of Uber.
Yeah.
To get that sense of what people are thinking, because that you get so out of touch when you're only talking to your own friends or the other people who are six-figure earners, the other people who are attorneys or successful investors, and you don't know what it's like to be down there. So it's a fascinating experience.
Well, in order to get the politicians to do that, Michael, they really have to care. And that's another show. So we'll talk about that another time. Listen, I have one final question for you. But before we get to that, when people go to guywhoknowsaguy.com, what can they find there?
They can find all kinds of stuff. What? I don't remember. I made the site a while ago over time. No. What they can find there is the biggest thing is at the top. There's a place they can put their email address in and get a digital copy of my book. And if they get that and they say, oh, an ebook, I don't read ebooks. I say that because that's what I say about ebooks. They can email me back and be like, could I get the book you read instead? And I will send them the MP3 of me reading the ebook. So you don't have to read the ebook, although you can. You could also, I've talked to people who are like, I printed the whole thing out and read it. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. But I also have an MP3 that you can just listen to, and I'll read my book to you.
Little bedtime story. Get yourself a nightcap and Michael will read to you. I love it. I love it. Well, the final question that I love to ask everybody on this show is sometimes we have people, we have a lot of lurkers on this show that I think are in the background going like, I want to do this entrepreneur thing, but I don't know. And one of the things that I like to ask everybody that comes on is if someone is watching right now that says, look, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to go into business for myself, but I feel like I can't do it my way. I feel like Joe's over here saying you have to do this, and my mom's over here going, you can't do this. What would you say to that person who's just like, I want to do it my way, but I feel stuck. I feel like I can't.
Well, I would say, I'm trying to remember who said this. Don't take advice from broke people, but also don't take advice from people who don't have a valid platform with that advice. So, if Joe works down at the steel mill and your mom is a retired teacher and your friend who works at the bank are all giving you advice about how to run your independent business, none of them know what the heck they're talking about. Entrepreneurs know about entrepreneurship. And even I mentioned that banker as an example, because they may think they know. They're like, well, I loan money to them all the time, so I know how their business work. They might, but they might not.
Yeah.
And everything changed in 2020. So even someone who had a business 10 years ago still might not know what they're talking about. If you want to find out what will work in entrepreneurship, talk to entrepreneurs. Reach out to entrepreneurs. And if there's a lot of people out there, myself included, that if you say, hey, I'm thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, but there's so much I don't know, many will have a conversation with you. And if you're not coming to take, you're just like, hey, I don't use the phrase pick your brain, by the way. Just don't say pick your brain. The imagery. But, I'd love to get your advice or insights. And, the best way, about to give you a hack here, the best way to get amazing people to give you their advice or insights for free. You want to know what it is?
Yes.
Start a podcast.
What?
Start a podcast about your journey to entrepreneurship, and then bring the people on that you want to learn from. And you can explicitly tell them, I'm on a journey to entrepreneurship. I want to get your advice.
Yeah.
But I don't just want to take your advice. I want to share it with the world. So I want you to come on my podcast, share your knowledge, your wisdom, share how you did it, your story, and help me and my audience. Who can say no to that offer? I don't have any knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah.
Or I'm too good for your audience.
Yeah.
They don't deserve me. Like, how do you say no to that? I don't think I had anyone say no when I invited them on my show last year. And I was pretty much saying, I'm not getting traction here, and I'm trying to figure this out. You want to come on the show? I'm looking for successful entrepreneurs who want to share their story, how they did it. And I had, I think, 50 guests.
Yeah.
Who came on and shared those stories. So, I either just reach out to have the conversations or have a podcast, but talk to people who actually know what they're talking about, because everyone has an opinion. Yeah.
It's very true. Very true. And if you come across those people, because I unfortunately have had a couple who are like, I don't do shows. I don't do shows like other people. Those are not the people you want on your show anyway. So that's what I'm going to add to the conversation there. Michael, thanks so much for being here tonight. I'm so glad we had the opportunity to sit down, and I am making it a goal that by the end of October, we do coffee or something over here.
Okay. Yes. Let's actually do that.
It needs to happen. Thanks so much, Michael, for being here. Make sure you guys go visit Michael's website, guywhoknowsaguy.com. Go visit. It's right there behind him. Jesus, so well branded.
I painted it on the wall.
Bet your wife was happy about that.
My wall.
I love it. So
actually,
thanks.
There's a permanent green screen in this wall, so it'd look better if this was painted on it.
Probably so. But thank you for being here tonight, guys. Don't forget as well that Divine DNA is on tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and they are starting their domestic violence awareness series. So make sure you guys check that out. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas. Michael, thank you so much again for being here tonight, and I will see you guys next time. Remember to do things your way. See you in a couple weeks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.